On January 18th, 2021, I published the first episode of the What is Asia podcast. Although even earlier than 2021, I had a number of ideas for an Asian studies show, which would be published on social media platforms, I had no firm understanding of what exactly such a program would focus on or how I would even start. Then, in mid 2020, I received an email from a man who said that he had a daughter who would be starting her undergraduate studies at the University of Oregon soon, and that she would be majoring in history with a focus on China. He asked if I could tutor her in Chinese history over the summer so she would have some familiarity with the subject before starting school in the fall. Although I enthusiastically obliged, it quickly became apparent to me that the person who was sending me these emails was in fact trying to scam me out of my money. After settling on the dates and times which I would tutor his daughter and coming to an agreement on the price, he told me that he wanted to mail me a check of far more money than we had agreed upon. He had explained to me that he was out of the country on business, and after mailing me the check, he wanted me to mail the extra money to his daughter in order to buy books, school supplies, etc. In reality, however, he was planning on mailing me a check that would, at first, appear to clear in my bank account, but would bounce after I withdrew the money to send to his daughter, leaving me to pay the difference to the bank. Although disappointing at first, this incident was, however, formative in my life. It caused me to think more about how I can use my knowledge of Asia and passion for studying Asia and its history to benefit other students of history as well as the general public. I thought back to how, as I was writing my master's thesis, which focused on Taiwan, people who did not have a background in Asian history, or in some cases, didn't even have a college education, would express to me that they were interested in knowing more about what it is that I studied, but they weren't sure how to start exploring this history and culture themselves. As I considered their situation further, it became apparent to me that they ultimately had two main options for understanding Asia. The first is to watch news programs such as Fox, CNN, or MSNBC. This option, however, is problematic for two important reasons. The first is that news stories dealing with some part of Asia often only describe the what, but not the crucial historical why. If they do explain the why, it's often only discussed at a surface level. The second reason is that news segments on Asia, particularly about countries such as China, Iran, and North Korea, are fraught with exaggerations, misunderstandings, and experts who, in reality, only have superficial knowledge of the areas that they are discussing. If you're not familiar with the scholars and scholarship which comprise the Asian studies community, though, it may be difficult to discern between the reliable and unreliable information being presented in these news segments. The other option is to turn to the literature produced by scholars of Asia. This option is certainly a valid one, and there have been many invaluable works of scholarship produced about Asia by these scholars. However, for a number of people, there may simply not be enough time in the day to sit down and enjoy these academic works. That's especially the case for those who, say, work two jobs, are taking care of children, or are currently majoring in a field outside of history. For these reasons, I decided to start a podcast in which I invite on professors, graduate students, and other experts in some aspect of Asia to talk about their area of specialization. I wanted to make sure this information was accessible to as wide an audience as possible. That said, with few exceptions, I've tried to keep each episode around 30 minutes, roughly the length of a commute to work. So that even if someone doesn't have time to read the research that a scholar is writing about on a topic, they could get a reliable crash course of that person's research in about a half an hour. I also ask all of my guests to leave out any academic jargon or complicated theory so that, regardless of a person's education level, anyone can digest the information being discussed in each podcast episode. Through this podcast, I hope to continue making information about Asia more accessible to a greater range of people from varying populations. I'm grateful that now 100 of you have chosen to subscribe to this channel. As much as it is exciting to see this channel thrive, I recognize that I have a responsibility to a growing number of people to provide meaningful information about Asia. As we move forward on this journey together, I hope to continue to improve the experience of listening to and or watching this podcast, not just in terms of its technical quality, but also in terms of my ability to ask thoughtful questions of my guests so that you, the audience, and I can further strive in answering the question, what is Asia?